We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button. If you like our content, share the video with your family and your friends. If you want to support this Rebel Outpost College Football YouTube channel with a donation, just hit the $sign when you make a comment and we'll get to your super chat as quick as possible. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. The CFP, the College Football Playoff, the revenue model, it's done. It got done. I have questions. You have questions. I don't know how many answers we're going to be able to provide on this show, but we're going to go through the reporting. There are some details that are either murky or I'm just not understanding it, or maybe they still are just not quite developed yet. But basically the revenue model is done. I would assume that the governance structure is going to be done. And I believe within the CFP revenue model, the look-in clause before 2028, that's probably in there. That's done. I think there's going to be a formal accepting of the ESPN's CFP 1.3 billion a year. I think that's probably all part of it. It's the big part of this, right? As we go through this reporting, I have one question for Notre Dame. I'm and I'm going to ask that at the end of the monologue. I think now this is not a pun, okay? I'm a man of faith. I'm not using this phrase in a bad way, bad connotation at all. But Notre Dame's going to have a come to Jesus type of internal discussion. We are going to get that. We're going to go into that. Now, yesterday, on our early peak episode, Cloak and Dagger early peak episode for members only, we announced that in the Holy Smokes Theater, there was movement. Notre Dame has gone from the fifth row of the theater, and they're standing at the very edge of the theater. The spotlight is on Florida State, and Clemson and Notre Dame are holding hands. They're at the edge of the stage. The spotlight gets a little bit on to Clemson and North Carolina as they're holding hands. But then on the far edge of the stage, in the shadows, is Notre Dame. We gave that information out to our early peak Cloak and Dagger members yesterday. We're going to talk about a little bit today. Well, we're probably going to talk a lot about Notre Dame today. In none of that movement, none of it, as we said yesterday in the episode, none of it had anything to do with the CFP College Football Playoff Revenue Model. It had to do with other issues, mainly around the future of collective bargaining, and we'll get into it. Or you can become a member and watch our early peak Cloak and Dagger episode. Well, we'll get into it live. But this college football playoff model, now that it is done, officially signed tomorrow, midday, drop dead deadline tomorrow. As you can see in the reporting, Notre Dame, as of right now, ladies and gentlemen, Notre Dame is the one school, the one athletic department that chooses, because they have a choice, that chooses to stay below the stratification line. And what I mean by stratification line, I talked about it throughout the spring and summer months of 2022. It was in the Los Angeles Times article. When we're talking about stratification line, think of it as this is the revenue line to keep up with the other big helmet schools to be able to compete for championships in the years ahead. You choosing, look, Major League Baseball, Kansas City Royals, they can win the World Series next year. The New York Yankees can win the World Series next year. But the New York Yankees have a larger margin of error, right? Because they have a whole lot more revenue. Nobody chooses to be Kansas City. Nobody chooses to be the Royals instead of the Yankees. Nobody. Well, except for Notre Dame. At this point now, we can clearly say that. There is a growing cost to staying independent for the football program. It grows yearly. And I don't know how you explain that to your fan base, which covers the whole country. A huge fan base. I know what Notre Dame says. I know they say the value of staying independent is so great to us. I get it. I get it. It is to a point. But Notre Dame, you are Notre Dame. I think you're handcuffing yourself in all. You're handcuffing yourself. And I think now it's been this way for a while. But now the pen is on paper. Now people can see. The SEC did not protect Notre Dame in any of this. Nobody elevated Notre Dame. Notre Dame has lost, and you think it's just the revenue model, the playoff revenue model? Wait till we see the governance, because that's going to follow the revenue model. Notre Dame is choosing not to be the Yankees. Florida State is spending money, risking to get in the courts to try to get eventually above the stratification line. Texas and Oklahoma, they choose to call Sankey together. Why? Because they knew this day was coming so they could get above the stratification line. They had a choice. They took the risks. They did it. They had to pay out money. They had to get out of the gore early. All this stuff, right? USC called the Big Ten alone. UCLA called the Big Ten alone. A bunch of people have called the Big Ten. Those who have had the choice, the opportunity, they've leaped. Others who haven't had the choice, they've tried. In Notre Dame, who would have an opportunity, who would have a landing spot, remains. All to remain independent for the football program. And the cost of that keeps going up and up and up. And a lot of people say, Greg, well, they just want playoff access. As long as there's at-large bids. I don't know. Now I think it's, well, when we go through the numbers here, and once the governance structure comes out, Notre Dame has always had some sort of leverage in modern college football. You know, nobody wanted, the SEC did not want Notre Dame to go to the Big Ten. The ACC did not want, the ACC's been helping Notre Dame. The SEC's been helping Notre Dame. The Big Ten's been trying to get Notre Dame in the conference. Notre Dame been shutting them down. Jack Swarbrick said in May in 2022 that everybody, this was before USC made the announcement that they were going to the Big Ten, although we were reporting it at the time at Flug Empire. In May of 2022, Jack Swarbrick said everyone's going to have to choose to be either, if they have the opportunity, to be in the solar system of the SEC or the Big Ten. Where Notre Dame, your time of choosing is coming. They are on the stage. And it's not just, this isn't about, they are on the stage. They're at the very edge of the stage. And in the next couple months, I got a feeling that the Irish are going to creep closer and closer to North Carolina, Clemson, that are holding hands at the edge where the spotlight is barely hitting them. But I want to thank everybody who's come into our show at this beginning of the show. And then I'm going to go through the reporting, and then you're going to see what Notre Dame, what their situation is. ACC in the Big 12 are agreeing. They had, looks like they're all in. The G5, they're in. Everybody's in. There's no split off. There's no split away. The SEC's not having their own playoffs. This isn't what Josh Pate said it was going to be, where the Big Ten and the SEC threw out all these things and said, well, we tried, and then broke away. That did not happen. And we said that was not happening here at Peek Around the Corner. The breakaway, the official breakaway of the SEC and the Big Ten may never happen. But if it does, it's going to happen 6, 7, 8 years down the road. We said it wasn't going to happen in 2026 for lots of reasons. One of the reasons is I don't think Petiti and I'll just leave it at that. I don't think they had the skill set to be able to pull it off. Anyways, let me thank everybody for coming on in. Jared Jones, Mr. Buckeye, The Walking Geek, Anthony Carlson Hagen, James Foster, Sunshine Design is in the house, Stephen McNeely, Early Peak member, Nick Kelso, Patrick the Baylor Bear, Tough Tony, Ryan Brooks. It is LSU Day, but I'm not going to do LSU. We'll put that off till tomorrow or this weekend. LSU is the next spotlight team. I have it all ready to go, but we have too big of a show. LSU is the next team we're going to do. The spotlight on LSU. Yesterday was Indiana. Day before that, Georgia. Day before that, Ohio State. The day after LSU is going to be the Houston Cougars. Richard L. is in the house. Jay Chapman, Nathan Campbell, Randy Taylor, Jonathan Price, the almighty Finn, T5 Terps, outside the echo chamber is in. Lee, JB, Bill G, Expedition Greg, Salt of the Earth, the best damn college football stop on YouTube. Thank you, Salt of the Earth. Appreciate it. Canes All Day is in the house. Laura Weiss, the Red Raider, Nathan Jones, Ryan Matson. Wow, a lot of people here. Cornelius Green, John Dowie is here. Jamie Thornton, the Razorback, Daniel Montcastle. Yeah, I was not taking a shot at anybody of faith. I was just using the phrase. They're going to have to come together. Notre Dame is going to have, and it's not like they didn't know this was going to happen. Jay Chapman, Notre Dame will be just fine. But do they want to be just fine? That gets to my question. Jay Chapman just stole my one question I have for Notre Dame. We'll forget that we had this conversation between me and Jay. But by the end of the monologue, I got one question for Notre Dame. And Chapman just stole it. Ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? T5 Terps. Holy smokes. Expedition Greg. Thank you for your generosity. Wow. Gifted a Cloak and Dagger Early Peak membership. You are hereby knighted once again, Cloak and Dagger, Expedition Greg, and Cornelius Green. Congratulations, Cornelius Green. Green, you are hereby Cloak and Dagger knighted. And that means, Cornelius Green, that you can go to our YouTube channel, watch the Early Peak Cloak and Dagger episode for members only. We also dropped an episode today episode 380 for everybody. People can go watch that as well on our YouTube channel. Okay, Immaculate is in the house. Good to know this is now ESPN's tournament, and the conferences in Notre Dame have to decide if they want to sign on to ESPN's tournament. Talk about hostile takeover. Wow, Immaculate's just coming in with a lot of fire. Holy smokes, I don't know what he means by all that, but we'll find out. Minnesota Seminoles. Domers are going to Domer. Movie Time Blues. Buckshot Kid is in the house. Kevin Hackman is in the house. Thanks for coming on in. Hagen is in. Cowboy Thunder fan. Can only watch the first half hour, but I'll catch the rest later. Thanks for all you do, Greg. You've got another fan in Oklahoma. Thank you so much. Cowboy Thunder fan 88. We got a few of them in Oklahoma. It's growing. Thank you so much for your super chat. I do appreciate it, good sir. Thank you for your generosity. It wasn't the first time. Hopefully, if we do our job right, it won't be the last time. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Cowboy. Jeff Fuller is in the house. John Dry is here. Jonathan Price. I might be repeating some names. Kyle Visser. Preseason champions. OHI. Oh, Black Rain. He's given up. He's given up. He's only watching the NFL playoffs and Big 12 football and the championship game. Black Rain might not be the only one. Clinton Moses is in the house. Okay, we got to get to it. We've got to get to it. All right, here we go. If I missed anybody, I apologize. Big news today. Big news. First, Pete Thamel puts out a post. The next iteration of the college football playoffs starting in 2026 is expected to be formalized in the next 24 hours. A 14-team format. Of course, we got a lot, PATC, we got a lot right here on this story. But the one thing we got wrong, we're going to be taking the L right now. We thought this would swim into the 16-team lane. To get everybody to sign on the dotted line, we thought that was going to happen. But we thought they were going to have to get to a 16-team, even though that has a lot of weaknesses to it. But no, it is going to be a 14-team for now. 14-team format is expected starting in 2026. Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger reported. The CFP is inching closer to an agreement revenue model. The CFP Management Committee is scheduled to meet Friday, where leagues and Notre Dame are expected to commit to new deals starting in 2026. Heather Dinich. The G5 commissioners have been in a difficult position without any negotiating power, but sources indicate they won't choose. They will not choose being excluded from the CFP. It's like the Godfather offer. You can't refuse. One group of 5 athletic director told me. That makes sense to me. I don't know how they would make the revenue that they're going to get in this deal if they separate it. The exposure. So everybody's in the boat, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody is in the boat. As reported last Friday and this Wednesday by Yahoo Sports, the new CFP revenue model is expected to look like this. The SEC, 29% of the total revenue, pie, Big Ten, 29%. The ACC, 17.1%. The Big 12, 14.7%. The G5, 9%. Notre Dame, 1%. UConn. Oregon State, Washington State, less than 1%. And we will get to what that means for Notre Dame. As previously reported by Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger. The playoff format will not be determined this week, and we took those reports over the weekend on Monday, and we said on Monday, it looks like we're going to have to narrow down our scope here at Peek Around the Corner. By the end of the week, we're not going to get that format decision. But Ross Dellinger says several 14-team models remain in consideration. The 2 or 3 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten, 2 or 3 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, 1 or 2 for the ACC, 1 or 2 for the Big 12, 1 for all these models for the G5, 7 or 3 at-large bids. And then, so you have basically the 3-3-2-2-1-3 model, the 2-2-1-1-1 5 model or whatever, and then the 5+9 model. So, again, yesterday's reporting, there was traction around the 5+9, but everything is still in consideration. And from our reporting here at Peek Around the Corner, the Big Ten has been big, digging their heels on getting automatic qualifiers, as many as they can. The SEC has been big on getting the biggest slice of the revenue pie, and they got that done. The Big Ten, maybe they acquiesce, maybe they're fine with the 5+9. We shall see. We're going to find out now. Here's the thing, though. Tomorrow, when everybody signs on the dotted line for the revenue model, are we going to get reporting that we have a governance model? And then within that governance model, does that how the next decision is made on the format? I'm just throwing that out there. But the playoff format has not been decided. Not been decided. Sources. All FBS conferences expected to agree to the next CFP contract. ESPN. Heather Dinich, Pete Tham. The college football playoff is on the brink of moving one important step closer to an expected 14-team playoff that would begin in 2026. As the 10 FBS conferences in Notre Dame are pushing to meet a Friday deadline to agree to the next contract and inform CFP if they will participate in the playoff in 2026 and beyond. This is ESPN, Heather Dinich, and Pete Tham. Multiple sources told ESPN on Thursday that each league and Notre Dame are expected to sign a legal agreement by midday tomorrow, Friday. Starting in 2026, the new agreement will codify the further financial separation of the expanded Big Ten and the SEC from everyone else in college athletics. The group of 5 commissioners have been in a difficult position without any negotiating power, but sources indicate they won't choose being excluded from the CFP. And that's what we believed here at PATC. Don't really think there's a better option. For now, this is the best option for the G5 schools and conferences. It's like the Godfather's offer. You can't refuse, one of the group of 5 athletic director told ESPN on Thursday. The financial distribution for the expected 14-team playoff will look radically different than its playoff predecessor. On an annual basis, for example, the Big Ten and the SEC will be making more than $21 million per school, a number that is up from the nearly $5.5 million the Power 5 leagues are currently being paid. In the ACC, the schools will get more than $13 million annually, and the Big 12 will get more than $12 million per school. Notre Dame is expected to get more than $12 million as well. As sources tell ESPN, there will be a financial incentive for any independent team that reaches the CFP. There will no longer be a participation bonus for any of the other leagues, a detail that was frustrating to some leaders in the group of five. And we talked about that in an episode this morning. Dennis Dodd reported that in a post on his X account. Now, Notre Dame is going to be making $12 million. There's going to be some incentive for an independent team. I made a phone call. And basically, what was told back to me is, and this was actually told to us, maybe 5 days ago. Think of it this way. If Notre Dame makes the playoff once every 3 years, right? One out of every 3 years, they're going to make the same amount of money on the base compensation that the ACC schools do. They're going to make their more than 13 million, 13.7, 13.6. So Notre Dame's compensate playoff distribution money is the same as the ACC. It's going to be if Notre Dame performs at all. So people may look at this and say Notre Dame is making even less than the ACC schools. They're probably going to be making the same. Okay? And if they don't perform on the field, if they can't get to the playoffs for the next 3 years, they're going to be making about the same as the Big 12 schools. But either way, Notre Dame's going to be making $9 million, $8 million, $10 million less than the Big 10 and the SEC schools. The group of five schools, revenue will increase to just under $1.8 million from a current $1.5 million. According to multiple sources, the American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Oresco, who's going to be retiring here, has been the most outspoken critic of the plan, but hasn't been able to garner enough support from other commissioners to fight it. Sources caution that the numbers are tricky to compare, as there's uncertainty about the fine points of the expenses and distribution in the next iteration, but in the general ballpark, those will be the annual distributions. So the numbers that we just went through, there could be a little bit of a difference there, okay? Could be a little bit of a difference. It's important to remember that these numbers are they're about to change the landscape. The money from historic bowl relationships is now being changed, repositioned through the CFP. That's a different scenario for Notre Dame, which did not have a traditional bowl payout. Again, the walls are closing in on Notre Dame. Because the Big Ten and the SEC have a combined 34 teams and the most CFP representatives, they also had the most leverage in discussions. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, who met with the conference presidents and chancellors this week, had said his conference had delivered 40% of the teams in the playoffs. We've been through this before. There's also a reason for the ACC slight edge on revenue over the Big 12. TCU is the only Big 12 team to reach a CFP semifinal, a final, who will be in the Big 12 next season. The Big 12 member Cincinnati earned a CFP berth in 2020 as a member of the AAC. The vast disparity of revenue from top to bottom has already elicited discontent and pushback from schools outside of the Big Ten and the SEC. to help alleviate that. So this is sort of like a taking the cork out of the bottle just a little bit, just to release some pressure, to help alleviate some of those concerns. Sources said a look-in clause for 2028 has been added to give the commissioners and Notre Dame leadership a chance to reevaluate the contractual agreements based on how every league has performed to that point. We talked about that on our live show yesterday. There's also a clause that permits that timeline to be accelerated if there is material realignment again. So, ACC, Big 12, Notre Dame, G5, UConn, Washington State, Oregon State. If you're ever gonna perform, if you're ever gonna punch above your weight class, if you're ever gonna beat David and beat Goliath, now is the time. Because there's going to be a look-in clause. In fact, I can just see it now. Right? Utah in the playoffs. They win a first round game. They win a second round game. They get to the finals. And the fans, the Ute fans are chanting, look-in clause, look-in clause. This is the time. Perform above your distribution model. Perform above that, and now we'll see what happens during the look-in clause. So more than ever before, you're going to have fans rooting for their conference mates in the playoffs. No question about it. Especially if you reside in the ACC, the Big 12, G5, Notre Dame. If the 10 FBS conferences and Notre Dame agree to move forward together as expected, the next step will be for them to complete the long-awaited TV deal on ESPN. Starting in 2026, ESPN is poised to spend an average of $1.3 billion for the next 6 seasons after 25. The CFP will unveil a 12-team format for the 24 and 25 seasons. The details of what's expected to be the 14-team field won't be determined until after the TV deal is done. So when the TV deal is done, then the format will be hopefully done. The format, how the field shapes up, is still to be determined. Yesterday, we were told from reports from Yahoo Sports and others that 5.9, 5+9, has been gaining traction, but it hasn't crossed the goal line yet. The format of the next 2 years will be 5 automatic qualifiers from the 5 highest ranked conference champions and 7 at-large bids. There's expected to be an ongoing discussion about the format for what's expected to be a 14-team playoff. The timeline of those crucial decisions is undetermined. It's not known whether college sports leaders will let one edition of the 12-team playoff play out or decide in the upcoming months. To me, now, I'm going to ask you this. To me, does this mean that we might jump to a 14-team playoff in 2025? College sports leaders will let one edition of the 12-team playoff play out or decide in the upcoming months. It is not known whether college sports leaders will let. So the option of 2025 going from 12-team to 14-team, it seems like it's there, correct? It seems like it's there. This week's internal deadline was an unusual path forward for an organization that has historically relied on anonymity, everybody agreeing, unanimous decisions to proceed forward with any major changes to CFP, not only from the 10 FBS commissioners, but also the respective presidents, chancellors, who represent them on the CFP Board of Managers. Because there will be a new contract in 2026. Decisions that are being made now for the future are based on whether their desire to participate in outweighs any perceived unfairness in the process or format. And it looks like they are all in. And they will all be signing it tomorrow, midday, Friday, March 15th. That was from Pete Thamel and Heather Dinich. I'm going to get to your comments. I'm going to open up the phone lines. But like I said at the beginning of the show is titled Notre Dame. Notre Dame, the cost of staying independent in football just went up again. In those 6 years, in those 6 playoff years, Notre Dame, because you are choosing to do so, you have an option, but because you are choosing to do so, you're going to be making about $45 million in total, less than every SEC and Big Ten school. And you also have a potential to make a little less than the ACC schools. Your choice. Because obviously you can move into the SEC or the Big Ten. That is a cost. Another added cost to staying independent. So my question to Notre Dame is, and it was already stolen in the chat. Are you okay with this? Are you okay with not having? You're not going to have the votes. You're not going to have any more leverage. The SEC is not protecting you anymore. The SEC is expected to expand again here in the next few years. The playoff model distribution, the votes, the leverage, the influence, Notre Dame is always going to be relevant. But is this fine? Is this okay for Notre Dame? Because it's never been like this before for Notre Dame. Never. Think about it. Go back. You've always had not just a seat at the table, but an equal seat at the table. Nobody has had more voting power. Nobody has been above Notre Dame. Sure, Notre Dame has only won, a national championship, Lou Holtz, for the last, 40 years? I don't even know, 1988. It's tough to win a national championship. You can have all the resources in the world and not win a national championship. You can be Texas A&M. You can be an incredible football program and not get to the national championship for decades. Michigan, now they just won one. It's hard. It's difficult. But it's even more difficult if you don't have the resources. If you don't have the resources coming in, if you don't have all this coming in with the top schools in college football, it's even more difficult. And Notre Dame has a choice. A lot of schools don't have a choice. And that money just isn't about football. That money can be spent on other sports that Notre Dame proudly has. Notre Dame has a proud athletic department. Of course, football drives the bus, like it does in every athletic department. But Notre Dame has put on more handcuffs just now, or it will officially tomorrow. Is that okay? Is it okay just to be fine? Is it okay just to have playoff access? Everybody's got playoff access. Everybody can get those at-large bids. Everybody but Notre Dame can get a first-round bye. And now the SEC and the Big Ten schools are going to be making more money when it comes to playoff distribution. Something that wasn't happening previously. This is a change. And then, like we talked about yesterday, When these student athletes, when we get to the time when it happens all over the country that these student athletes are going to get higher compensation pay, Notre Dame ain't going to have the same amount of money as Indiana. They're not going to have the same amount of money as Purdue. They're not going to have the same amount of money as Ohio State, as Alabama, as Georgia, as Tennessee, as Kentucky, when coming in from media money. And then you're going to have a CBA collective bargain agreement with your football players, just the school and the players. While other football players, there's going to be a collective bargain agreement, some sort of talks back and forth from a conference to the football players. That's a big disadvantage for Notre Dame. And that is the chatter behind the curtain. And that is why we at PATC, inside the Holy Smokes Theater, for the very first time, we had to move Notre Dame from the fifth row to the very edge of the stage. Because how people are talking about it. They're talking about it. People are trying to figure out the end game, how this is going to work. You know, you have NLRB, you got to have that USC ruling happening here soon. USC players might be able to unionize. These conferences are going to want to take control of the negotiations between the schools and the conference and the student athletes. It's not going to be by school, student athletes, school, student athletes. It's not going to be individual schools. It's going to be by conference. And again, this change in landscape doesn't favor Notre Dame. And then you have Notre Dame student athletes who are lacrosse, who are other sports. They're going to be negotiating. They're going to be part of the negotiation for ACC student athletes being represented by a union or some other body, negotiating with the ACC, but the football players are going to be negotiating with Notre Dame alone. And I'll leave it like this. In my opinion, this is my perception. The fat guy from Minnesota, just sitting out there in the upper edge of this country. Notre Dame, I get it. One of the big reasons why Notre Dame is such an incredible brand is because of their independence. I'm not naive. I know that. They were forced to play a national schedule. Notre Dame was forced to go all over the country. They played in front of their fan bases in Los Angeles, from the East Coast, of course the Midwest. But Notre Dame is Notre Dame because of the incredible university, the incredible history, the incredible fan base. Notre Dame can be Notre Dame without being independent. Notre Dame can be Notre Dame if they join the ACC full time. Notre Dame can be Notre Dame if they join the Big 12, all their teams in the Big 12, except for the men's hockey. Notre Dame can be Notre Dame if they join the SEC. Notre Dame can be Notre Dame if they join the Big 10. I will die on that hill. Notre Dame's brand is going nowhere. Their power, their relevance, their fan base is going nowhere. They're not leaving. They're not disappearing. But the ability to compete at the highest level of college football, and this revenue issue is going to affect other sports in Notre Dame. Grab what is there, Notre Dame. Grab what is there for you. You have the choice. Texas and Oklahoma, they had the choice, they took it. USC, UCLA, they had the choice, they took it. Oregon and Washington fought. Things, we reported it accurately for months here. Oregon and Washington, they have to take a discount, but they're going to get into that they're going to get above that stratification line. The Big 12 did everything they could to help themselves out. Everybody is trying to reach the highest ground possible, but Notre Dame. So my question to Notre Dame is it just okay to be fine? Yeah, you're going to be fine. But is that what you want, just to be fine? That's my question. It's my honest question. I got all the respect in the world for Notre Dame. My family is Irish Catholic. For goodness sake, all the respect in the world for Notre Dame fighting and Irish. But is this okay for Notre Dame? As long as you can be just an independent football program, it doesn't matter how much power you lose, how much leverage you use, it doesn't matter how far below the stratification line you sink. This is it? That's my question. Okay, let me get to the comments. And first of all, I got to get to some generous super chats. Thank you so much for your patience. Greg, Anthony Carlson. Greg, I'm running into ads, just letting you know. Yeah, we do have it on conservative ads. I think what happens if a lot of people pop in early, which is great news for the channel, then the ads start early. But thank you, Anthony Carlson. I appreciate you becoming an early peak member. Once again, you are hereby cloak and dagger knighted. Thank you so much for your generosity. I do appreciate it. Canes all day. Preach it, Flugs. Notre Dame, $9 million gap a year compared to SEC Big Ten is just for CFP distribution. Then there's the whole matter of the huge gap in TV revenue. There is a gap. We don't know how much it is, but there is a gap. And then there's the gap of power, the voting structure. We're going to find out about that when the governance structure comes out. And this has never been Notre Dame's position. I mean, this is not what Notre Dame, this has not been Notre Dame's position. But we've been talking about it since August 2022. The walls are closing in on Notre Dame. This is just another, and what makes it different here is we've heard enough to put Notre Dame on the stage in the Holy Smokes Theater. We've heard enough chatter. They're at the far edge. Nothing is imminent. Nothing is imminent with Notre Dame, but they are on the stage. They're not in the fifth row. They're not even in the first row. They're on the stage. Okay. I'm going to get to your comments right now. We're going to open up the phone lines. Hold on, everybody. Here we go. Phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. The phone lines are open. Give me a call. Are you surprised? Are you horrified that this happened? Do you think that the Big 12 or the ACC should have walked away? Do you think the G5 should have walked away?
Call from
BJ.
BJ, the floor is yours. It sounds like this is getting done, BJ.
It does. First, I just want to say thanks for having me on again. And your opening argument or statement for Notre Dame joining some kind of conference was pretty dope. The ACC may need to hire you for their legal consultants because you've done a really good job of stating your case about Notre Dame should be, cognizant of joining a conference.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
as far as I'm glad it's getting done. I think I talked to you yesterday. I'm not a big fan of just two power leagues, but that's reality. Um, I am surprised at just how the numbers kind of came out, and I just don't see how the leagues can be the leagues being the mid majors, ACC, Big 12. I don't see how they can be competitive. You know, because when you look at the numbers, I think the Big Ten is going to have around 95 to 100 million dollars per team per year. You know, ACC teams and Big 12 teams can't compete with that, right?
Well, we're gonna
But
find out, right? We're gonna
yeah,
find out if according to this looking clause, if the Big 12, ACC, if they punch above their weight, these numbers can be adjusted. So I'm not going to say that nobody compete. I just think the money makes it so your margin of error is less, right? It's difficult to keep your players when these schools are going to be paying their players directly. That revenue, they're not going to quite have the revenue, no question about it, BJ. But I'm not going to say they can't totally compete. I'm not going to go that far. We're going to have to wait and
I'll just
see.
I'll just say this. You're right. Anything is possible, and that's the beautiful thing about sports, right? And I just when you look at the performance of these teams when it was a $20 million difference, and they didn't perform as well as they should have or could have. Expecting those teams to compete when the difference is 50 million is just highly unlikely. It's not impossible. You're right. You're completely correct. It's not looking good, to say the least.
Yeah.
But I want to bring this up. Do you think with the looking clause, we talked about it yesterday, do you think Sankey and his crew and Petiti and his crew would even approach the conversation of getting even more of the money if, let's say, the ACC and the Big 12 haven't won a game in the next 2 years, or the next two CFPs?
Yeah, I know you brought that up yesterday. I suppose that's possible, right? Yeah, and of course, the adjustment can be made. The numbers can be moved on material realignment. In other words, ACC imploding. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I think in theory you are correct. If the SEC is winning all these playoff games, the SEC might be able to jack up their percentage after the look-in is over. Correct? So.
And the only reason I bring that is I read I think the Heather Dinich article, and it talked about Sankey, brought to his presidents and his ADs, but hey, we've represented 40% of the participants in the CFP. And the fact that he would bring that number up to negotiate, I would imagine he's always keeping tally, right? He's keeping tally. So it's not a far stretch for him to be like, hey, we've won 80% of the games we've played in the last 3 years. We deserve more money.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it is what it is. And lastly, is your opinion on Notre Dame? If you had, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you think the needle is moving towards Notre Dame finally making that jump, or do you think Notre Dame is going to hold out until they can't hold out anymore?
I think the needle has moved a bit, and that's why we put them on the stage in the Holy Smokes Theater. We wouldn't have done that if we didn't think the needle has moved. There's been chatter about Notre Dame in this whole when these student athletes are able to negotiate. When that happens, it's going to be more difficult for Notre Dame than it is going to be for an Alabama, for Ohio State. When Ohio State and Michigan, when the Big Ten Conference is, let's say there's some union that comes in for the Big Ten, okay? And they're representing the football players if you're a football player in a Big Ten conference. When the Big Ten Conference negotiates with this body, they're going to use information, data, revenue from all the schools in the Big Ten, right? All of it, including the 7, the 8 Big Ten schools that don't quite make what the other 12, 14 schools do, okay? So that helps out the Buckeyes and the Wolverines and the Nittany Lions. You're not going one-on-one collective bargain agreement with Ohio State. So your minimum pay is gonna be determined. Who's ever going to be negotiating for the conference, they're going to use the whole conference in total. For Notre Dame to negotiate with his student athletes, it's just going to be Notre Dame, right? They're not going to be able to use a UConn, a whatever independent. So, and there's and we were told a whole bunch of other stuff about that. I don't want to go down in the rabbit hole today on it, but that world is going to be very difficult for standalone schools to handle. Mm-hmm. Plus, these conferences are going to be making more. They're just going to be more and more empowered. They're going to be empowered. They're going to have more power. And I think we're going to find that out, BJ, real quick when it comes to the governance structure that's going to get reported on here soon. Notre Dame is not going to be where they have been.
And I can see, how the NFL, the shield is way more powerful than the individual, kind of teams.
Yes, it is.
I can see college football appears to be going that way, where the brands of the league are so powerful that it can withstand any team kind of leaving, so to speak. And so the independence that Notre Dame has is becoming less and less of a factor, because the brand value of the SEC and the Big Ten is just enormous.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thanks for having me on. Also, and lastly, I was watching this on another channel. There was rumors about, Penn State having Florida State on their 2026 schedule. Just a rumor. But, do you think, on another topic, the Florida State topic, do you think Florida State will be out of the ACC by 2026?
I've often used the year 2027 as the year that they would join the Big Ten or the SEC, Big Ten being the chalk. But I think the odds are growing that it could be 2026. I think the odds are growing substantially that there could be some mediation happening soon. So, but what about this 2026 Penn State and Florida State on the football schedule?
Yes, it was. I watched this channel. I forgot the name of the channel. I forgot, but one of the hosts was saying his contact at Penn State, that Florida State is scheduled to be on the 2026 schedule, and so
that's
kind of how that ties
game.
in. Yeah, for a conference game.
As a conference game?
As a conference game.
Okay.
So it's rumor mill, but I was thinking, based off what you said about Notre Dame and the squeeze being on for them, there couldn't be a more perfect press conference than Petitti walking to the stage saying, "Hey, we have Notre Dame and Florida State coming to the league."
Yeah.
It would be a great power move if he's able to kind of get those two schools to come together and join the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, let me get off here. Thanks for having me on, as always. Stay blessed.
Appreciate it, BJ. Thanks for calling, sir. Beautiful. I have not heard that rumor at all about there being a conference game already scheduled for 2000. They already have. Penn State's already got their 2026. Uh, they've already got their 2026 football schedule.
Call from
Chris Kenny.
to accept, press 1.
I'm sorry, did not get the name.
Hey, Greg, it's Chris Kenny.
Oh, Chris Kenny, thanks for calling again, sir. I appreciate it. The floor is yours.
I will be very brief. My immediate reaction to this is I view it as, if not a total win, a pretty darn close total win to the Big Ten and SEC. If they're getting what appeared to be their opening offer on revenue,
Yes.
then it suggests to me that, the questions around format and access, which are not off the table, by the way,
Yeah.
and I'll get to that in a second. But that suggests to me that, this quote unquote plan B that we tried, negotiating approach that they took or threatened, to take, I think bore fruit. The other leagues could have said no or could have pushed back harder. Phillips is not very good in litigating through the press, but Brett Yormark is. And I don't really think there was much persuasive pushback or much pushback at all, really, from any of the other leagues, right? There was sort of outcry over the auto bid thing, but setting that aside, which I think even a lot of Big Ten and SEC fans didn't view as very credible. I'm a Big Ten guy. I didn't like it. But I think they got what they wanted because they're getting all the money they asked for, number one. Number two, there is no, right, if I'm reading the most recent reports correctly, there is no performance-based payment option. Like, it's a fixed pool based on the conference draw, and that's it. So, this idea that a Cinderella could go on a big run and earn a bunch of tournament units like you can do in basketball doesn't apply here. So there's really no amount of money that they're leaving on the table or that they're leaving to chance, which basically satisfies, I think, all the demands they were making on access anyway when a performance model was still on the table. And number three, they still have the opportunity to draw the rules around what access are. Like I saw the Dellinger tweet that was, I think it's not explicitly sort of strongly suggested that whatever governance model or access model the Big Ten and SEC come up with is what everybody's going to agree to because they've already committed to this MOU. They've already conceded on the financial distribution. So I don't really know what more is on the table for anybody else.
I got a feeling that the governance structure is done, right?
Yeah.
So
I agree with you.
Yeah, and when that gets revealed, suddenly the Big Ten and the SEC can shape things in the future, and that gets back to Notre Dame. They've never been in this situation before, okay? Once that governance structure gets announced, I think reality is really going to be setting in for, and that's going to give more, it's going to be more gasoline on the fire for what Florida State's doing, what Clemson has spent 7, 8, 9 months strategizing, paying a consulting firm, paying lawyers, having third-party talks. We know that they are with everybody, with former employees of media companies and all this stuff. They know that all this stuff that ACC schools are going to be even more incentivized to go ahead and roll the dice because why won't they? Because now the gap's going to go even bigger. The voting power is going to get more against them and everything else. You're absolutely right, sir.
And the last point I'll make, I think these look-ins that they're describing are each a one-way ratchet. The realignment one I think is pretty obvious. I think if the Big Ten and SEC grow, which everybody assumes, I think correctly that they will, then that's only going to accrue to their benefit. Maybe there's some scraps that the Big 12 picks up and that But even then, honestly, I think at best that just keeps them steady where they are, right? If the Big Ten and SEC grow and they grow with the biggest programs, they're going to probably want more than 58%, right? Because nobody takes less in realignment unless you're Oregon and Washington. None of the incumbent members are going to settle for something less and get bigger just for the sake of getting bigger. So they'll get a bigger share of the pie. It's going to come out of the ACC's slice, and maybe the Big 12 has to grow, if for no other reason, just to stay steady. So I think that's another win for those two. And the performance look-in, or whatever you want to describe it as, I don't view that as like hope for Cinderella either, to be candid with you, because, number one, we don't know what the governance structure looks like. I think the best case scenario, and this may not even come to pass, but the best case scenario is it's one conference, one vote, and majority rules. Mm-hmm. Even, let's assume that that's the case. Like, what incentive do the 5 G5 conferences have to give the Big 12 a bigger share because Iowa State won 2 games one year? They have zero incentive to do that. The Big Ten and the SEC have zero incentive to do that. If anything, they want to maintain their incumbent position because their teams didn't do as well. So you're not going to go out of the goodness of our heart and on like the basis of merit, here you go, Iowa State gets a few extra shekels. That's not going to happen. There's no way that's going to happen. I think the opposite is likely, right? If the Big Ten and SEC to continue to dominate this thing, which I think everybody expects them to do, the look-in, I think at most will be an opportunity for them to rejigger the format more. Or it'll be an opportunity for them to, hey, we don't want 58, we want 62% of the pie. Because, look, we got 62% of the teams in, or whatever the case may be. I think more likely than not, it's a provision that's thrown in there that is, face-saving. But I think the best-case scenario for the other leagues is that nothing happens under that provision, because I don't think anything good will happen.
Well, there is a scenario for something good to happen for like the Big 12 schools, because if that and that sounds like that clause is going to be in there, looking clause. You can see where the ACC implodes, right? And maybe the Big 12 gets a couple of those ACC schools, okay? Now, the ACC isn't quite what they are. They try to backfill. There's some sort of confidence. But the Big 12 wants to make sure that their universities it's Brett Yormark's job to make sure his institutions, every inch of the way, fighting for them, is at a level higher than those ACC schools that would unfortunately be left behind. Correct?
Right, but
I'm just saying that's one scenario where that's why Brett Yormark wants this looking clause. It isn't so much to compete against the SEC and the Big Ten to close the gap. It's to try to separate themselves from more schools like they did with the Pac-12 school, more schools like they did with Oregon State and Washington State if the ACC implodes.
Right. No, and I completely agree with that. But I think if I'm understanding it, and I don't, we won't know, I guess, until tomorrow, there's 2 different look-in clauses, right? There's one that's triggered by realignment. So if the ACC were to implode and they lose members and they backfill with schools that are like SMU, who's not getting a full share because the power teams are not willing to share with them. So if they add more G5s or they just get smaller and everybody else gets bigger, that clause to me is what takes care of that scenario. But the other one is like, oh, well, in a few years we can look in sort of based on, what the results have been to date and see if we need to tinker with this thing. I've heard some people say that, like, well, that's an opportunity for somebody to, like, overachieve in the short term and use that as leverage to get more with the new look-in. My point is, I don't think that that's got any realistic chance of happening. And I think the only, to me, the more realistic option is the one the other schools, the other leagues that aren't the Power 2 would not want, which is, hey, the big boys have dominated this more than they even projected. Now they're back at the table to eat again. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be an opportunity for someone smaller to use a St. Peter's or an Oral Roberts or Loyola, type basketball run and say, okay, well, we're entitled to more now. I I don't think that's going to happen at all. I'd be stunned if it did.
Interesting comment.
Okay, well, that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir.
And just to say, I know, last point, I know I've talked a lot about the Plan B and Super League and all that stuff. I am happy at this outcome. I want to keep college football national. I want to keep it diffuse. I want to keep it, heterogeneous. I want to keep it unique, and keeping it a national championship in some, reasonable, defensible format is good for the sport. And if this is the best we can do, then even as a Big Ten guy, I'm happy that this is where we appear to be landing. I think it's better than the other alternatives. So have a good night, Greg.
Appreciate it. Great call.
All right. Peace.
Yeah, and again on the Super League, if I ever hear or see any evidence of that forming in the years ahead, I will be reporting on that Super League, whatever gets generated. I did not. I was not a believer in the Super League forming in 2026. I think I've made that perfectly clear. Everybody that we talked to said, nah, it ain't happening for so many reasons, and I've been through those. Not going to go down that rabbit hole. But if it ever is a story, I will hit it. I will hit it.
Call from
Crab cakes in football.
Crab cakes in football. Can you hold for a second?
Sure can.
I do appreciate it. There's one comment and then a super chat I want to get to here. Dennis Hattie says, what is going on internally at Nebraska is alarming. One of the people are speculating that Trev Alberts, the athletic director, left Nebraska because he was frustrated. And he was frustrated. He even said it on an interview about a week ago with Steven Sipple, 93.7 The Ticket in Nebraska. He was frustrated that Nebraska had not hired a president in about 7 months. President Carter left to Ohio State in August, and they still haven't named a replacement. I don't know if that's it. I don't know why Trev Alberts left, but this is a post I put up on my X account this morning. Just for an example, it was announced on April 3rd, 2023, University of Minnesota President Joan Gable was departing for the University of Pittsburgh. Rebecca Cunningham was selected as the next president of Minnesota on February 26, 2024. That process was 10 months, a lot longer than what Nebraska is at right now. And I've been following the story of the selection of the president of University of Minnesota, the new president. They were down to the final three about a month ago. This has been going on for a long time. And then I was starting to check I was doing a search on other presidential searches at other universities. And some of them get done in 5 months. A lot of them get done in 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, some of them a year. So this is not, let me see here. Hold on. It isn't, and then I posted this. Minnesota's athletic director, Mark Coyle, worked with Minnesota's interim president, it was Jeff Efferin, for 46 weeks before a permanent replacement was named. Nebraska president's search of August 23 to middle of March, not historically lengthy, to be honest. Something else is going on. I don't know. I don't know if Trev Alberts, he's named in a lawsuit. Maybe that affected him. Maybe he went for the job of being the leader of the playoff committee. He did not get that. So, I don't know. But Nebraska, I just saw about an hour ago, they did name an interim athletic director. They have an interim president. I don't know what's going on, but the length of time that Nebraska has taken the Board of Regents to announce their new president is not historically ridiculous. I know it seems to us probably it is, but historically it's not. And I have not seen anybody bring that
I'm
up
good.
in any
I'm good.
reports, so I decided to do so.
I'm doing fine.
And one
No,
other, hold on here. Hold on.
I don't have anything.
Super chat, Ryan Willie. Maybe Notre Dame knows it could only beat Minnesota, Nebraska, Indiana, Purdue on a regular basis. That's why they're scared to join the Big Ten. Thank you, Evo Badger, for your super chat. I appreciate your generosity. I appreciate the elbow that you just threw. Okay, crab cakes and football. Thanks for your patience. The floor is yours.
Okay, two things really. I don't like the fact that ESPN is going to be in control of everything because they're notorious for being pro SEC, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure all the SEC teams get in. And everybody knows it's coming. They did it last year. They've done it times before. And they're just going to come up with any and every excuse. I wish they would find a way to take the biasness out of when it comes to preseason rankings in general and actually choosing the 14 best teams, well, 13 and plus the group of 5, and letting them just play it because that's what I think is going to happen is, 10-2 Tennessee or 10-3 Tennessee or whatever, somebody with a couple of losses in the SEC is going to get in over somebody else, and it's just going to be, well, we have a harder schedule and this and that and the other, and the Big Ten's going to try to say the same thing, and they're respectively going to go back and forth and say, well, our schedule's harder than your schedule, but the numbers aren't going to be there. I just don't like the fact that the SEC is getting pretty much everything it wanted, and that ESPN is still going to be, I'm not going to say rigging it, but it's almost rigging it. You might as well call it what it is.
Yeah.
And the other one, if Notre Dame and Florida State, is this a race for let's say Notre Dame decides to throw in a towel and join the Big Ten, does that stop FSU from joining, do you think? And they cap it off and say, hey, we got the one we wanted, now we're done expanding? Or do you think FSU gets in first, and then if the Notre Dame Fighting Irish get in, then they stop it? I mean, because I've heard a long time ago that if they can get Notre Dame, they were done. That's what everybody kept saying. I don't know if that's true or not because of the Washington, Oregon thing, but it could be. So I'm just wondering if it's like a battle to see who gets that 1 or 2 remaining spots in the Big Ten.
Well, I don't know if there's just 1 or 2 spots remaining in the Big Ten. There might be only 1 or 2 spots, but I'm not sure about that. And I don't believe anything is imminent with Notre Dame. In other words, I don't think they're going to, because remember, they're going to have to get out of the grant of rights that they have with the ACC. So, they just can't go slip through the back door and join the Big Ten and the SEC or whatever. So they're going to have to write a check. They're going to have to get to the courts. I think it's going to be easier for Notre Dame, but I don't think, it isn't just like they can slip out the back door. So,
right. Because I know that their FSU tried to, one of their things that they had said was, we wanted to try to be the first out, everything else, and everybody was speculating it was a race. So if it is a race, the only team out there that's available that has more value than Florida State, in my opinion. I know you say North Carolina, but I still think it's only Notre Dame. But so that's why I mentioned that. I was like, okay, what if Florida, Notre Dame did do that? Would it change the dynamic of Florida State and this whole entire lawsuit thing?
Yeah. There's so many variables to this crab cakes and football.
True.
It's I think let's see what happens on March 22nd and April 9th.
All right, that sounds good.
Especially that March 22nd crab cakes. That's the one in Mecklenburg County. Let's just see what the judge says. And then, depending on what happens there, we'll take it from there. That's about as much as I can say.
All right. Well, that's all I had for
I
you.
appreciate
I just
it.
wanted to jabber a little bit and give my 2 cents. Not that it's worth anything.
Appreciate it. No, your 2 cents is worth more than my quarter. All righty, sir?
All right, man. Have a good
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Beautiful call. Crab cakes in football, Mr. Terrapin. I did have a little bit.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate,
to
Mr.
accept,
Hawkeye,
press
the
1. To send a
floor.
voicemail, press 2.
You know what? Something's going on with these phones. Immaculate, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm having a little bit of issues here in the last 30 minutes. I keep having to close
I think it's 'cause
windows,
you're
open
popular.
windows. I don't know what's going on. I think they're trying to sabotage. There's a saboteur. It's probably coming from somebody in college football. Immaculate, the floor is yours. What do you got to say, good sir?
I think it's because you're fighting the man here, Greg.
Yes,
and,
I am.
I need you to help me here, if you would, please.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing here is real ugly, and maybe I'm seeing this wrong, and I hope I am. You know, seeing some tweets from some ESPN reporters, some very strangely stated statements. You may or may not know what I'm talking about here, about how
No, I probably don't.
like saying like the 10 FBS conferences in Notre Dame need to decide by the deadline on whether they want to be a part of the CFP or not.
Yep.
Like, what angle is that coming from? What perspective? Who could possibly say that? Like, it can't be the executive director. He works for them, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So are we just saying ESPN is now basically owning this thing? And it's like you join their plan or you're just not part of it anymore, because ESPN is not on the board. Those conferences are on the board, but that now no longer is going to exist for 2026. Like,
Yeah.
none of the landscape, none of the behind the scenes, none of that exists anymore, basically, is what we're doing here. And they're saying no one else has a bid on this. You have no other business partner. You either sign on to this and become part of this, or you're not part of this at all.
Correct.
That is a bad place for this whole situation to be in. Like,
Yeah.
number one, where's Fox? Look, they're out of the exclusive negotiating period for ESPN. That's over. Where's Fox? Where's NBC? Where's CBS? Where is everybody coming in saying, we'll buy into this? They're playing along like they just want a subcontract from ESPN because they're all tired of how messy that situation has been now, right? Am I reading this wrong? Or
Let me put it this way. There's nothing that binds anybody together. Nothing outside of 2025. There's nothing there. The only thing that binds anybody together now is the college football playoff contract that ends going into 2026. So this is like there's the cliff and then there's nothing else. So what ESPN is saying is we're pulling out, we're done with this. And look, their proxy is SEC, right? I mean, you know, and Fox, Big Ten speaks for Fox. Big Ten is Fox's proxy. So ESPN owns it. They've owned the big bowl games, so they own most of the playoffs anyways. They own this thing until 31. They've put the offer on. They were in the exclusive window. They put the deal out. And it's like you jump in now, but if you don't, then nothing's guaranteed to anybody anywhere. Which then comes the highly probable, power to breakaway. But I think the problem with that is, like I've been saying, if things go the way the Big Ten and the SEC thinks it's going to go, projected to go to, it's going to be a lot easier to do all that a few years down the road, right? Because they're going to get more power. This whole thing sets them up for more power, more money, more the ACC schools, more governance, they don't want to do it now, as I've been reporting. They don't want to do it now. They might do it later. And this is a way to get everybody on board so then they can continue to consolidate their power, their money. Yes, it's ugly. Definitely.
I don't understand why, why don't they just, number one, for Big to go along with this, to me that suggests that they've talked with Fox, and Fox is like, yeah, we'd probably rather just sub-license from ESPN. We got to deal with them. I don't understand why they wouldn't go with NBC and CBS, who you've now got a business relationship with, and say, we could cover this whole thing if ESPN really wants to pull out. Why not? If we go to 14 teams, how many games is that going to be? It was 11 games for the 12, so it's, add another game to that or two. I don't know. So it's really not that much more. Why couldn't the three of them cover that? Now they know, okay, 5 + 7 is in. Okay, now we could just do 5 + 9. They know what they're buying. They know. I don't understand at this point in time how ESPN has such a stranglehold on. That's why I was saying with my earlier comment. It looks like a hostile takeover.
I think
you're done.
I think though ESPN has bowl rights for the six.
How long does that go for?
Huh?
How long does that go for?
I think it goes until 31 or 32. So that puts them in the catbird seat when it comes to showing playoff games. I think the best that Fox could have done or Amazon could have done is gotten a first round game and then be guaranteed of a championship game somewhere in this length of, and they never got it.
Yeah, that's what the problem is. That makes a lot of sense.
That's where the problem is. So now, but keep an eye on those, negotiations for the bowl games years down the road. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. That pretty much settles that as to why ESPN. Because I was looking at this going, how does ESPN have such a hold on this? But
can I interrupt, Immaculate? I'm sorry to interrupt you again. Kyle Visser said, "Greg, reset just happened again." Are people in the chat room experiencing the show going back to the beginning after a commercial? I'm not getting anybody telling me that except for Kyle Visser and maybe one other person.
I haven't experienced that once ever, so I don't know.
And I've never had that complaint. So Kyle Visser, I am not. I don't know. I've never heard of that. What Kyle and another person says that every time they have to go, when the commercial hits and they get out of the commercial, the show go back to the beginning. Raw Gross says it happens all the time. Other people are saying no. Well, Gross says I've had it. It's been done before. Now he says a lot. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know. Again, there's a couple people, but
someone's saying on mobile phones. So maybe if that's happening on the mobile phones.
It's happened on my phone. It's happened before. Boy, I don't know how to. I don't know what.
If it's mobile based, then that's just an app problem. Like, I don't know if there's anything you can fix on that.
Happens on the phone. Gerald says it's never happened to me. Paul says it resets. Paul Gonzalez, does it happen when you're on the phone? Tim Bellis says never happens to me. Rog Ross says he only watches on his phone.
I think it's a phone app situation is what's starting to look like.
It's a phone app situation. Randy says a lot on the phone. Update the app. I got an updated app.
No, I think they do. I think they need reset on their phones. It's on their side.
Well, I do. Most people are saying they haven't. Well, anyways,
Yeah.
I do apologize if the experience is not up to what it should be. I'll check around, see if I don't know. I'll do the best I can, guys. That's all I can say. I do apologize for the inconvenience if it's on my end. Immaculate, go ahead. I apologize that I interrupted you once again. The floor is yours.
I just want to ask you one more question before then I'll get off so the next person can get on with you here. From what it's looking like, so we talked about this. They needed to figure out payout structures and voting structures before they could even get down to actually making the tournament, right?
Yeah.
Like, because they had none of that figured out. I mean, to all of us, that's like the part, but that's behind the scenes. They need to get that done first. That's what they're doing now when they're talking about the payout percentages. Did they already figure out voting?
You know what?
Did that?
I think they have.
Too?
I think
that would
have.
also explain this is like ultimatum. Like,
yeah.
If maybe like SEC and the Big Ten have most of the voting rights, and one other conference joined in with them, maybe for the majority vote, because they already said there's not going to be unanimity anymore. They're not going to have unanimous vote requirements.
No.
So I think that the part that they're not telling us is that they've got voting rights figured out, and that's probably even uglier, and they're just not even telling us. We'll know eventually, but I think they got that figured out, and it's very uneven. Because like they're saying, they still might figure out AQs and all that next week. They are not deciding the tournament structure right now. It's just payouts. So man, that's why I'm getting tired of it. We've got next week for this.
Yeah, well, and okay, I'm not 100% sure the governance thing has been locked down, but there has been some reporting alluding to it that we're gonna.
Okay.
But yeah, can I ask you a question about Notre Dame? Because I asked the question to Notre Dame today. I don't know if Notre Dame was listening to me. I don't know if the president, the father who's the president of Notre Dame, I forget the guy's name. I'm not sure that he had our YouTube show on today. Probably not. But my question is it okay just to be fine at Notre Dame? Is this it? Are you okay for the first time? For the first time, Immaculate. Mm-hmm. They have lost power. They're not in the same revenue stratification line anymore. They're not going to have the same votes. Is this it? Is Notre Dame fine with this? Is this cost of keeping the independent football program? Are they fine with this, Immaculate?
I would say fine with it might be a little too strong, but I do think that it's evident, at least I think so to me, of course I could be wrong, that they prioritize access over money. And that seems to be a lot of what their fans are even saying. Like, a lot of them don't seem to care that they have not even been told what the pay is on their NBC deal. Like, that's still quiet. That's hush hush. I mean, so that's lower than what they wanted.
Yeah.
And I think they want access first and foremost. And yeah, independence seems to be their thing, at least until like maybe the perfect conference scenario is there. Like clearly at this point in time, the Big Ten is just backup plan. It's not. Like if that was the thing, I think that there's enough there that they wouldn't have signed this deal with NBC and they'd be joining the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So it feels like backup plan at best. Do you think that's wrong, or?
I don't think anything you're saying is wrong. I just don't know. We did hear, Immaculate. I don't know if you were here on the live show when we reported it. We heard that NBC with Notre Dame, whatever the number is, it's a sliding scale type of contract. There's a range to it, depending on Notre Dame's quality of opponents.
Oh.
So it was a little bit of a hedge, a little bit of a protection for NBC in that deal. Now, that hasn't been reported in public, but, and I'm just going to talk a little inside baseball here for the rest of you, for the 220 people are in the chat watching this, put your hand over your ears so you don't hear this. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to put me on mute or put your hand over your ears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Immaculate, that comes from the source that gave us a heads up on the TV deal itself. You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
So, when it was announced. And so, it's probably accurate that there is a little bit of a range, a little bit of a give there. And that's a protection for NBC. And that is coming from somebody at NBC. So, again.
That makes sense too, though.
Yep. So I don't know. There's probably exit hatches all over the place on that Notre Dame NBC deal. But I don't know. I don't know that. We haven't been told that, but I'm guessing that's the case.
I would guess that NBC is kind of pushing them toward, they'd want them to join the Big Ten. And if they still have a deal with NBC, they probably have a strong negotiating position to talk with Fox and maybe CBS that they have some type of special rights to getting the Notre Dame games, kind of like how Fox has first pick and they always get Chicken Ohio State, that maybe NBC, by if NBC joins, they would maybe get like the first couple picks of Notre Dame's home games. It does not seem like Notre Dame wants to join the Big Ten. They may have to, and they know that they always have a place there.
Yeah.
It seems like right now they still want to maintain that independence, and if they lose out on some money, it seems like they're willing to eat that. And as long as they have access, I think they always feel like they're going to be relevant. And maybe in the future when the money starts coming back up, or whatever choice they make, they can build back up. But it's kind of hard to understand that mindset, right? Because it's so different from else. It's just
one more thing, Immaculate. One more thing. Do you got another minute?
Yeah. What you got?
I put it up on the screen. Chris Ottman-Bell, the Gopher wide receiver who played for about 7 years. 7 years for the Gophers. All these injuries, working out, having a pro day camp thing at University of Minnesota, says the following. Chris Ottman-Bell was asked his thoughts on Max Brosmere, the transfer quarterback, the best FCS quarterback in the country last year. Chris Ottman-Bell said the following: Gopher Nation, you are in good hands. I have worked with him all week. He is on the money. You're in good hands. I promise you. Woo! Baby! Let's go! What do you think of them apples?
For your sake, I hope that's right. For your sake, I hope that's right, because I hope he knows what he's getting when he goes against Iowa.
Well, he's going to go against Iowa early, so All I know is there's an open practice, Minnesota Golden Gopher spring practice, April 11th. I'm going to do all I can to be there. All my eyes will be on Max Brosmere. If Max Brosmere can play at the Big Ten level, and if we get some of those transfer guys, if they can contribute in the secondary, Gophers got a shot to improve on last year, but we need Max Brosmere to be a top-notch quarterback. All right, thank you, Immaculate. I appreciate your time, sir. You guys going on live tonight?
He is. He's having on some of the FSU folks. They're going to be talking their legal situations and whatnot. I will be on with them tomorrow night. I'm taking tonight to see,
Yeah.
take this all in. We'll
Got
see.
it.
I want to see what the final decision is tomorrow.
Yeah,
so.
you got it. Appreciate it, Mr. Hawkeye.
And good talking to you.
Thank you. Great call by Mr. Hawkeye. Crab Cakes and Football. Thank you for your super chat. Mobile here and no issues. Appreciate the information, Crab Cakes and Football. Thank you for your generosity. Tony, Greg, I have deduced Catherine Tappan is Big Ten man. No, she is not. Thank you, Tony, for your super chat. I appreciate it. Appreciate it so very much. There is some, hold on, everybody. Hold on. Yeah, Jamie Thornton, Miss Arkansas Razorback. Thank you for the DM. I did see this. You know what? I got to shut down some of these windows here. This is getting out of control. First of all, let me go back to that rumor about Penn State having Florida State as a conference game in 2026. This is Penn State's conference schedule, or their whole schedule for 26. And they don't play Florida State as a non-conference. So I don't know. I don't think there was much to that rumor.
Call from
Dan,
the floor is yours. How you doing, sir?
good, Greg. Great show as always. Just got a question for you. The money difference will be extreme, obviously, roughly, 100 million Big Ten SEC to 50 million Big 12 or maybe lower. But is that money that they're getting from the TV contracts, is that money, will it automatically go to pay players? Because if it doesn't, there's always been a disparity between the big helmet schools and smaller ones.
Yeah.
The NIL, what for some of the smaller schools could come into play. But if they're not able to, not say it may be that way in the future, but if they're not able to use that TV contract to pay, even though the difference is a lot, that seems to me that eventually, I mean, maybe a smaller team with a great coach and some players could make a run in the Big 12 or ACC. I know
agree.
it would be tough, but
I
I think the possibility is there, So
Yeah.
I don't know how that'll play out. I mean, but so I just was curious on your thoughts on that. And great show as always. I'll hang up and listen, Greg. And take care now. We'll talk to you later.
I'm going to expound
You
on
bet.
that. I appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
I agree. Look, I agree. There's only so many football players out there. There's only so many spots on these teams for the Big Ten and the SEC. They're not okay. So they're gonna get most of the big time players out of high school. They already do that already. I mean, there's only players want to play. That's why they go in the portal. That's why they go other places. I mean, there's only 11 guys on the field on offense, defense, backups, special teams. I think the money advantage is about giving yourself a bigger margin of error, just like the Yankees. But the Yankees don't win it every year. They were not very good last year in baseball. I think a Big 12 team can compete. I think an ACC, I think a G5 might win a playoff game. Maybe. I mean, Tulane beat USC 2 years ago, and they were the best G5. They were a really good G5 team. And then you're going to have these NIL collectives. You don't know. That's... I absolutely agree. It doesn't guarantee victory. It just gives you a bigger margin of error. You can keep your coaches, your staff. You're going to have bigger. I would say that revenue, that playoff revenue that goes in the conference of the Big Ten and the SEC, some of that is going to be used for direct payment. That it goes into their big bucket of media money, and some of that's going to get sliced off to the players. But I mean, geez, there's only, there's a kid down in Waco, Texas. He's not necessarily going to want to play for, if there's no SEC teams that are recruiting him. He's a high 3-star. He's probably being overlooked a little bit. He probably doesn't want to go to Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Maybe he wants to stay. Maybe he goes to Baylor, and he's a superstar, and Baylor wins it all. I don't think this completely shuts down. It makes it more difficult. And the Big Ten and the SEC wants the advantage of the money they have, and they're going to use it. No doubt there's an advantage. No doubt. There's an advantage with all that revenue. Look, every once in a while, you see an SEC team beat a lower SEC team, beat a higher SEC team. A lower Big Ten school beats a higher Big Ten. Every once in a while, you see that. Even though that school has a big money advantage over... and you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see schools that are disadvantaged when it comes to revenue. They're going to beat the team with the high revenue. I don't know. Look, none of those ACC Big 12 schools or whatever other conference you create, the Mountain West, the New Mountain, these schools aren't going to just lay down. They're not going to lay down. They're going to get some really good players. They're going to be some programs that develop really good. They're going to get their hometown hero in high school. Guy's going to come in at a discount, and then they're going to rock and roll if everything's aligned perfectly. I mean, shoot, we've seen that with Northwestern, who they've won. They've won. Well, there's been years here in the last 10, 15 years, Northwestern barely spent any money on their football program. And they've beaten some, it happens.
Call from
Hasbro.
All right, the floor is yours, sir.
How you doing, Greg?
Doing good. How you doing?
I'm good. Once again, late to the party. I'm listening to your last broadcast late, and was getting a little upset with listening to all the Big Ten and SEC homers trashing the ACC and the Big 12, and that lose the power to, and this, that, and the other thing. And I would just like to remind everybody, if you're not a fan of one of the top 2 or 3 teams of those programs, you're no better than we are.
Yeah.
We are all pretty much on the same. If you'll look back last year, I think the SEC had an out-of-conference losing record against the other 2 conferences.
Yeah.
ACC. The Big Ten had a losing record against the other 2 conferences. I think the Big Ten West was 1-6 last year, if my math is right. So, I mean, I understand they got more money and all that, but we're all playing the same game. So, I'm not going to fuss about Ohio State and Michigan and Georgia and Alabama and all those, but everybody else, we're all playing the same game. So just chill.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to
brother.
that.
I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Great call, sir. Yeah. Now, because the football players are going to get paid directly from the schools eventually here. Yeah, with more money, that money gap is going to be more of an advantage than it was before. But again, I'm telling you, there's only so many positions that are open on these football teams. There's going to be a lot of great players in college football that are not going to be in the SEC and the Big Ten. I get it. If you look at the draft picks, if you're gonna look at the NFL draft here, coming in April, whatever that is, and most of them you're going to see the numbers. Most of them SEC, Big Ten. We all understand that. I get it, but school, you're still going to be able to dream. You're still going to be able to dream to say, we can get in the playoffs. And who knows? One game, David can beat Goliath. You know what we do here at Peek Around the Corner? I do watch parties. For big games throughout this season. I hope you join us. I know the people who have joined us the last 2 years have had a great time. We watched the game together. I can't put it up on the screen, of course. That's a copyright. But I watch it. You watch it at home. We're watching together. People are putting their chats in real time. And we're going at it as the game's being played. And I'm always rooting for David over Goliath. That's what I do. And I have a great time. And if it's a great game going into the third quarter, if it's a great game in the middle of the third quarter, now I can't find it because I did not have it set up. I play this type of music, the mariachi. And we have a great time. If we're watching a close competitive game, we play this music and we have a great time. And my point is oftentimes during our watch parties, David beats Goliath. I don't know, it probably happened about 40% of the time as we're watching these games. So you get in the playoffs, you got your shot against that monster Big Ten team with all the revenue, the SEC team with all the revenue, but you got your shot. And maybe you can pull it out. And plus, I take it from a Minnesota perspective. We have been outspent by the Buckeyes, the Wolverines, the Nittany Lions, the Badgers every year since I'm 55 years old. It's always been David versus Goliath. Minnesota used to be Goliath. But, and Minnesota has beaten Nebraska 5 straight times. 5 straight times. Minnesota has beaten Nebraska more than Nebraska has beaten Minnesota since Nebraska entered the Big Ten. Before Nebraska entered the Big Ten, Minnesota and Nebraska played 60 times against each other, and Minnesota defeated Nebraska more than Nebraska defeated Minnesota before they went in the Big Ten. So before and after, Minnesota has beaten Nebraska more. Nebraska has spent way more money on football than Minnesota. It's not even close, especially the last few years. The NIL collective at Nebraska versus tiny Minnesota dinky town athletics. The collective's getting bigger. Nebraska, where they pay their coaches, their staff, the recruiting classes are 30 classes higher than Minnesota. But every time they play, Minnesota wins. Revenue, great. Give yourself a bigger margin of error. No, none of us is debating that. But you can, you better have a good coach. You better be able to have these guys develop, grow, stay in your system, and win when they're all get to be grown men. Those are the programs that once in a while shoot up and punch above their weight class. I am not going to put a hole in the ground and put a Big 12 ACC G5 or school into the ground and bury them. I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to do that with Notre Dame. It's just that Notre Dame has a choice.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, the floor is yours again. What's going on, sir?
What's up, Greg? I was listening to your show. There's two things I think that I hear that I kind of want to get your opinion on. One is I know we look at things from a fan's perspective, and because we're fans at the core of it. But I do think when these executives and commissioners and ADs and the decision makers are actually negotiating, I don't think the fan perspective is weighed very highly. I think they look at numbers, attendance, viewership, and I think those have more weight on how the playoffs are going to be structured and settled and payouts and stuff. And so, whenever I look at it, I try to look at it from that perspective. Do you think that in negotiations there's merit to that the executives and decision makers look at, the numbers instead of from a fan's perspective?
Well, yeah, of course. Now, Sankey has said we've had 40% of the playoff teams, therefore we should have a bigger voice. So he's actually put percentage of teams they've gotten in. But yeah, the eyeballs and all that plays all a part of it. That's why they have the leverage. That's why Big Ten and SEC have the leverage.
And secondly, how far? Because you talked about this before, and I hate to use the word diabolical because it's kind of a deviant word, but that's the only description I can have for Sankey's behavior from what he says to me and his plan. Do you think by 2026 there will be a plan in place to pay players in terms of having them as employees or revenue sharing? And ultimately, in my head, I think Sankey kind of wants to separate the revenue sharing teams from the non-revenue sharing teams. In terms of sharing revenue with the players.
I don't maybe, but I have no idea because Sankey won't really talk about it. Sankey hasn't given his vision on revenue. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm going to put it up on the screen here. This is Sankey talking about basketball. In a recent phone interview, Sankey acknowledged the tournament is one of the few things that bonds the desperate world of Division I together. Nothing remains static, he told ESPN. I think we have to think about the dynamics around Division I in the tournament. He added that recent runs from UCLA, from the first four to the Final Four in 2021, and Syracuse run in the round of 16, beginning with the playing game at Dayton in 2018, show the caliber of power conference teams on the fringe of the NCAA tournament. That just tells you the bandwidth inside the top 50 is highly competitive. We are giving away highly competitive opportunities for automatic qualifiers, smaller leagues. So he's taking a dig at the smaller leagues. And he says, I think the pressure is going to rise as we have more competitive basketball leagues at the top end because of expansion. So what Sankey's saying, BJ, is, you know what? The playoffs, the NCAA tournament has to expand because guess what? The SEC, we're going to be expanding. We're going to have better basketball programs, and they should be able to get to the dance, or we should eliminate some of these automatic qualifiers from lesser leagues. But you know what? Florida Atlantic made the Final Four last year, right?
Yep.
So, and there's other examples. What other team made the Final Four last year? That was a small San Diego
State.
Yeah. So I don't. Sankey. I don't know if it's devious, but he has a way.
It's diabolical.
I don't know what. I don't want to use those words, but it's he's looking out for SEC. And, you know, when you read that interview from Sankey about basketball, don't tell me he doesn't have North Carolina in his mind when he's talking about that, right?
Oh,
He
for
wants
sure.
he
For
wants
sure.
to he wants to elevate the value of his conference when it comes to basketball value, and he wants to make sure when he adds teams, not just Texas and Oklahoma, but adds a few more, that they got spots if they're great, you know. So that's why he wants to expand the tournament. Go ahead, BJ.
And you know, I hope it doesn't sound, you know, when I see Sankey and his behavior, it's diabolical. And he selectively talks about Syracuse and talks about UCLA, but doesn't talk about Loyola Chicago, doesn't talk about FAU. And these are smaller teams from smaller leagues who compete, who outpunch their class year in and year out. So it was the North New Jersey school that went to the Elite Eight a couple years ago. I forgot the name of the team. But yeah. So, but my point is, I think Sankey, the push for this money is ultimately to use this money to directly pay the players, and when that happens, that's where the $50 million difference between an ACC Big 12 team and a Power 2 team is significant and it's impactful. Otherwise, I don't see the notion to destroy the history and pageantry of a sport just to collect, you know, a couple, you know, $1 million extra a year. He has to be able to use that money to his advantage. And the only way he can really use it to his advantage is to directly pay the players, in my opinion.
Yes, yeah. Yep. And we talked about that in episode 1 of our channel. That was our manifesto. We talked about that was the straw that is stirring all the drink. That is why Texas and Oklahoma called the SEC, because the players at some point are going to get paid. So the conferences that can produce the most revenue is the place that you want to be in. Texas and Oklahoma had that figured out way back in 2019. That's why USC called the Big Ten. Absolutely.
So that's all I kind of want to say about that.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me on once again.
Appreciate it, BJ. Thank you, sir. If you are new to the show, or if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure you open up your notifications because we can come on live at any time. If there's breaking news early tomorrow morning in regards to it's official with the CFP, we will be coming on live tomorrow morning. It could be a PATC breakfast live show. So make sure when you subscribe, have your notifications on. If you liked our content today, please smash the like button. If you did not like our content, hit the thumbs down button. Let me know how we can better give you the content that you deserve as a college football fan. I want to thank everybody who's given us the generous donations. We got more people becoming members of our channel. Once again, if you want to become an early peak Cloak and Dagger member, we put out a very significant episode yesterday. So if you're a member and if you haven't watched it, go watch it. If you want to become a member, go to the description box below this video, hit the link, hit the join button, and become a Cloak and Dagger member. And I appreciate the incredible comments in the chat room and the great phone calls once again. We're going to be closing down this live show, but keep your head on a swivel. We're going to continue to follow this story, the Florida State story, and the spotlight teams that we're doing every live show, or almost every live show. We're going to be doing LSU next, LSU Tigers, then the Houston Cougars, and on and on and on throughout the country. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. So until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.